When we're going through a spiritual awakening, it really is like a veil has been lifted, seeing beyond the veil. That's a very common like spiritual concept that is talked about when we are on a spiritual journey. So really, when we're going through a spiritual awakening, we kind of see, we feel and sense things that there is something beyond just this life. We also discover that things that we thought were true aren't. Things that we were taught aren't necessarily true or correct. It can be very jarring to have this new profound sense of life and how you are going to now continue on knowing this inner knowing that there is more to life than just the everyday. We do not live in a three-dimensional world. There is many dimensions out there. There's a lot of limitless potential and things that people are still discovering. I think that looking into like quantum physics is really interesting, and dabbling into like ancient civilizations. Like there's a whole rabbit hole that people really go down when they start to wake up and feel like they're going through a spiritual awakening. If this is your first time here, hello, my name is Courtney. Welcome to my channel. I love talking about astrology, crystals, spirituality. So this is a fun little podcast style video that I wanted to create. So I hope that you grab a drink, a snack, and enjoy this one. To sum up like the spiritual awakening part, it really is like this shift happens. All the things you start to think about your life differently, what you want in life, who you are, things that you've been taught, like everything feels like it's just changed, like forever changed, really. And a spiritual awakening can happen at any point in your life. It doesn't matter how old you are, you can experience a spiritual awakening at any point. There are no rules. What was really enticing me to make this video was thinking about the process going about having this spiritual awakening and how it's different today. So it's quite amazing to think about how much spirituality is represented nowadays in present day. It's actually quite interesting. I feel like even looking at the last 10 years, it's changed so much. I feel like 2020 was really this time when like the floodgates were opened and like spirituality became quite mainstream, to be honest. I think for the younger generations right now, especially, it is a little bit of a trend, I'd say, spirituality, spiritual awakening, having these types of conversations with their friends. I feel like it really wasn't like that 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, but it is so prevalent right now. I also think about the fact that a lot of millennials and Gen Z, they are aware of spiritual awakening. They are aware of a spiritual person. They have a sense of what spirituality is. And it really makes me think about when they have children, instilling this idea in them and how it will just keep evolving and become more and more well known. It'll just be part of life. I think a spiritual awakening used to be this really big thing back in the day. Like people probably wouldn't believe others when they talked about having this spiritual experience, and they felt like they didn't have anyone to talk to, where I feel like today there are so many people that can relate. There's a place to, share these ideas, being that we have the internet now, and it's just so different. The only time I could think of like really in history where it was kind of like the same vibe as right now is probably in the 60s when we were, going through a revolution, and hippies were talking about, Eastern medicine, Eastern teachings. The West was really being exposed to consciousness, higher consciousness, and it really grasped a lot of people, and it really started a movement. And obviously, that generation grew up, their kids, they were aware of this, and they passed this knowledge on to their children. And I just feel like since the 60s till like, let's say 2020, it really had only been like a kind of like a topic within certain circles. And I feel like nowadays it is definitely blown up. It is definitely a talking point with a lot of people, and you are hearing more conversations with people that you wouldn't expect, I guess, to talk about this, older, younger, like everyone really is on this wavelength of spirituality and what a spiritual awakening is. And it's really interesting. When I think about spiritual awakenings today, I think one of the biggest factors is the internet and, the power of people sharing their experiences, and also the power of people, honestly, they could construe their thoughts, their feelings. Some people may be using the internet to give a false narrative. I know we all know what this is, but there are some darker aspects to sharing and having the power to instantly create something for someone to watch and ingest that is very impressionable, wherever they're at in their spiritual awakening journey. They might listen to someone and think something that might not really be true. That's where using your discernment is so important when you are at that phase of just absorbing as much knowledge as you possibly can about the spiritual awakening process. When you're learning about astrology, when you're learning about crystals, whatever it may be that you are really like leaning into, everyone kind of has, a different thing that they feel really drawn to. For me, that would be crystals. Like that was just like the one thing that felt so true to me in my spiritual journey that I knew, wow, like this life is amazing and I want to learn more about the metaphysics of this. With that internet, there's also a huge backlash. There's also the reality of people that don't agree with a lot of spiritual teachings or mysticism, divination, whatever it is that isn't, I guess, normal or what have you. A lot of people dismiss that, and they can come on the internet and really preach hate. They can obviously comment whatever they want, and really bring in a lot of negativity towards, the spiritual space. I understand why some people kind of are scared. I think they've been taught something for so long that when people are talking about something that is completely against what they believe, it just causes something within them to just lash out. Spirituality is something that isn't science backed. There really isn't any science in it. And that's honestly what I think is so beautiful about it. But when people are waking up, it's almost like you don't need the science because you feel this sense within you. You know what's true. Your intuition just like gets so heightened when you're going through an awakening, and you know what's true, what's not true. Again, it is picking up with your discernment on topics, situations, what you hear from people, what you read, what you see. It's really based on you and what resonates with you. So now just to chat about what I think has really changed and shifted with spiritual awakenings today versus in the past. The first thing I would say is really the community aspect of spiritual awakenings. People are craving connection nowadays. And like I mentioned, the internet is a great place to connect with others that are having these spiritual experiences or are learning about these spiritual topics. And maybe they don't have a close physical inner circle to talk about these things. Some people do, and that's great. But a lot of people, they may not have those sacred spaces to share with others. But luckily online, you can build a community. You can talk with others. You can make friends and talk about your spiritual experiences. A couple 10, 20 years ago, it wasn't like that. So that's a really big difference in why spiritual awakenings are so prevalent nowadays, because we have the power to speak about them in a way that we never have been able to before. To the second thing that I think has really shifted a lot with spiritual awakenings today is where people are getting their information. I really love getting a good book spiritual book on something that I'm wanting to dive into more. I feel like books were always where people went to learn about spiritual stuff, spiritual awakenings. But nowadays, people are really getting a lot of their information from social media. This is a completely new thing, and I think it can lead to some issues because, again, we don't know exactly what that person is really credible, or if they really are a master in that sense of what they're talking about. I feel like it's great to share experiences, to talk about things, right? I definitely do that here on my channel, but it's not like I have a degree in some of the things that I talk about. Not that what I'm saying is how it must be, but I'm really opening a conversation, and that's what a lot of people are doing online, is they're opening conversations for people to talk about in the comments, or, feel inspired to make their own content and talk about this, or, feel inspired to chat with a friend about this thing that they learned that they think is really cool, that's a spiritual topic. I think books are kind of phasing out a little bit nowadays with spiritual awakenings. I feel like books aren't as big as they used to be. They're still definitely, people love to read. I'm not saying like people aren't reading books, but I think more people are consuming this knowledge, this spiritual knowledge on social media. And it may affect, the generations ahead of us when they are going through spiritual awakenings. There's going to be so much information out there. And part of the process when you're going through your spiritual awakening is kind of learning all this information and then seeing what resonates with you. So I think at the end of the day, it'll all work out. It'll all be fine. But it definitely is a brand new medium here with the knowledge and information that people are consuming today. And then one last thing that I think is a big shift that has changed with spiritual awakenings today is the whole idea of going through a spiritual awakening or having a spiritual journey. The end goal, from what I understand, has always been about reaching enlightenment. And I don't think that is really what spiritual awakenings are about today. Maybe this is just my opinion, but I feel like enlightenment to me is about being in a state of peace, like all the time. Like you are just so content, so happy. You have found enlightenment within yourself, where I feel like the spiritual awakening end goal is really looking for bliss in your life. I think there's a difference between enlightenment and bliss. I think this blissful state that we are seeking is really us being this highest version of ourselves. We are thinking about who we are, what we want in life, and we're going after that. We are seeking that. We are attracting that. That is what I think the end goal kind of is with our spiritual awakening. We want to feel so good. We want to be surrounded by the people that we love. We want to be even surrounded by things that we love. I know materialistic things isn't obviously part of, like, it's not like the go-to, but like, to be honest, like we all are thinking of those materialistic things that we want. Doesn't mean we need a lot of them all over the place, but we do think of those things. That is part of this journey, this awakening, even discovering that we may not want the things that we thought we wanted. New things come into play. It's really about getting to that state. That's what we're striving for. That's what this awakening is. It's realizing, wow, I am this person. I want this in my life. I'm going to envision this. I am going to go out into the world and bring, exude this vibration, and I'm going to attract it. So that was really my spiel on what a spiritual awakening looks like today, my insights, my thoughts. I would love to hear from you what your take is on spiritual awakenings today, how they're different, how they've shifted. Go ahead and comment down below. If you liked today's video, please give it a big thumbs up. If you are new here, I would love it if you subscribed. Thanks so much for hanging out, and I will see you in my next one.